If you believe what I believe, we're going to make some dramatic connections that are going to empower your business life to go to the next level. My name is Russ Fitzpatrick. I'm one of the founders of the Associate Works Productivity Platform and the new My Works Suite technology platform. Both of these systems are absolutely free. So the cool thing about my job is I don't have anything to sell you here. We are neutral, third-party, objective people that can help you look at things in your residential real estate career differently. Maybe it's time to triple your income. Maybe it's time to add 50% to your income. Maybe it's time to double your income. But everything we do is sponsored by AnnieMac Home Mortgage and the AnnieMac Nation. We have a growing workaholic army of real estate agents and brokers from across the country. If you haven't yet joined, go to Facebook and join the private group called AnnieMac Nation. You'll get better connected with us. We'll be able to share with you systems, technology, all free of charge. No funds to be exchanged, no credit card to swipe, no checks to write. If you're a broker owner and you're online, first we apologize to everybody for the tech hiccup at the beginning. But if you're a broker owner online, join the private group called National Flagship Brokers. They're all on AnnieMacWorks.com. You could find those little blue Get Connected buttons on the AnnieMacWorks.com website, and you could join AnnieMac Nation and the National Flagship Brokers group on Facebook. I've been in the residential real estate business for 29 years now. In early 86, I became a real estate agent. In early 99, I became a broker owner, and for the last 5 years or so, I've been running this national network of real estate agents and brokers from across the country that we call the Workaholic Army. After almost 30 years and working with some of the top brokers, franchisors, agents in the country, I would like to suggest that real estate agents can be broken down into three categories. The buyer's agents, the agents that drive consumers around, think about an agent that's 65% plus of their income is generated from buyer side transactions. The listing agents are fewer and farther between. And I'm not talking about the one-off listing agent that bumps into a listing. I'm talking about the listing agent that 65% plus of their income is generated from listing side transactions. And then the third category of real estate professionals in this industry could be identified as entrepreneurs. Well, I don't know, you guys are in the business. Is there a difference between a buyer's agent and a listing agent? Buyer's agents who are online are getting defensive, saying, well, no, I do buyers, this all there is. But wait, all I'm saying is, if you do 65% of your business from listings, you're a different type of real estate agent than an agent that does 65% or more of commissions from buyer's agents. And if you're an entrepreneur, you think about everything differently. And I hope to challenge you today to think like an entrepreneur, and I'm going to dissect and paraphrase Will Durant's quote from a book called The Lessons of History. I was introduced to this quote through Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich manuscript, and his quote is heavy for me, but when we turn it around on you, hopefully it'll define what we mean by the three categories of real estate professionals. The men who manage men manage the men who manage only things. And the men who manage money manage all. That was Will Durant, The Lessons of History, close to a century and a half ago. Now we paraphrase his quote and we change a few words and we say, the agents who can manage listings manage the agents who manage only buyers. But, he says and, I want to say but, the agents who manage systems, money, and people manage all. There is a group, a subset of real estate professionals in our industry that think of our industry differently than the buyer's agents and the listing agents. They think about recurring ritualistic systems that can produce revenue over and over and over again. They think about return on investment in a different way than buyer's agents and listing agents do, and they think about managing the people to run the systems and the money. And these entrepreneurs, I believe, manage everything in the real estate industry. The National Association of Realtors studies these numbers, and they put out these statistical observations year after year, decade after decade, that the smaller group, the smaller subset of real estate agents that manage personal assistants out-earn other real estate agents 3-1. So here's me, an 18-year-old kid, going to Florida Atlantic University and get my real estate license. And I hear through the grapevine that agents that hire and manage personal assistants out-earn agents that don't 3-1. Well, I'm such a simpleton. I just said, well, I got to get a personal assistant. I mean, that was the aha moment of my life at 18, 19 years old when I said, you mean that agents that manage personal assistants out-earn agents 3-1? I said, well, I got to be one of those then. I was such a simple copycat type of a realtor. And the word copycat is used with almost a derogatory connotation. I think Tony Robbins did it best when he started focusing on the conversation of modeling. Rather than copycat, let's use the professional dialogue of modeling human behavior. Copying someone who's doing exactly what you want to accomplish. Like if I wanted to run a 5-minute mile, I would need to train like the people who are running 5-minute miles. If I wanted to climb mountains, I might need to copy. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I don't want to reinvent it when I'm 1,100 feet in the air dangling by a little rope. I would rather do what they have proven works, right? So copying someone who's doing exactly what you want to accomplish, having or aspiring to be like someone that you role model, that you hold high, with high esteem. Notice what's working for others. I think the most aggressive entrepreneurs that happen to be in the real estate industry really study the Risk Media Power Brokers report, and they also study that top 1,000 real estate agent list on Real Trends. If you go to Real Trends, it's a division of Wall Street Journal. Real Trends analyzes the behavior of the top 1,000 real estate agents nationally. And you can go into their websites, you can go into their bios, you can see what those top 1,000 real estate agents do. And if you wanted to model behavior, maybe you don't want to model someone who's doing $200 million a year as an agent. Maybe you don't want to model someone who's doing $60 million a year as an agent. But maybe you're more comfortable modeling someone who's doing $35 million, 25, 18, 12 million. Maybe the next level of aspiration for you isn't about role modeling the number one RE/MAX agent in the world, but modeling the guy in your community that seems to have his act together the most, or the lady in your community that's consistently doing $500,000 a year. And here you are, maybe doing 80, 100, 120. In fact, I want to take a second right now and dedicate this class to my buddy. I'm not going to mention his name, but my buddy, I work out with him 3 days a week or more, and he's a RE/MAX agent who's hovered in the 6-digit arena for the past decade. But in order for him to grow, I said this to him a couple days ago when we were on one of our visits to the gym. I said, you're not going to catapult from 100 to 200 or 150 to 300 until you learn how to hire and manage personal assistants. If he's going to do that, he needs to model someone else who's already doing that. Well, we've got some systems that we're going to share with you today, and I'm going to encourage you to identify 3 to 5 people in your industry that are doing something that you want to emulate, something that you want to show. So rather than take a very specific look at Laurie Finkelstein Reader, who manages like 25 assistants and a team, and she's the #1 Berkshire Hathaway agent. I think, excuse me. She just moved over to Keller. But she's a $50 million a year agent, okay? Mr. Nelson out in Montana manages 72 people on his team. This is a $200 million a year agent, right? Instead of looking at those examples in our industry, I'd like to look at a very simple, honest, hardworking businessman that had a philosophy back in Bentonville, Arkansas, that said to the community, if you visit my store, this was one of his principles, someone is going to be at the front door to say hi. And you know that in Bentonville, when Walmart first started, he was the person who did that. Sam Walton was the person who greeted people when they came into his store in the beginning. So if you think about Sam Walton, and we put this as a perfect analogy for your career path, and we say Sam Walton used to walk up to every customer who walked into his store and smile and greet that customer. Could you imagine the largest retail organization in the history of industry, not just America, in the history of all industry, the largest retail organization in the history of all industry started with the founder, the CEO, the president, the mind behind it all, actually standing at the door in Bentonville, Arkansas, and greeting people with a smile when they came into his store. Sooner or later, Sam himself had to replace the person at the door. He had to find someone with a smile to go to the front door and to greet people and shake hands at every customer that walked in, because that was important to him as a retailer. Because he needed to go drive over to Ben Franklin or the other Five and Dime in his neighborhood and go drive over there and walk through the store with a little notepad. And what he would do is he would walk through the store with a notepad and he would write down the prices of the items that he carried that were in his store that were similar to the items that were in their store. And then he would drive back to his little store in Bentonville, Arkansas, and change the prices just a few cents lower than the prices that were on those. Well, could you imagine in 2015 having one guy be the shopper? Well, Sam Walton had to replace himself. He had to do what he does best, and he had to delegate the rest. He could no longer afford the luxury of standing at the front door and smiling and greeting people. He could no longer afford the luxury of doing the drive-by, walk-through competitive price shopping by himself. He couldn't afford the time to shine the floors, order the inventory, taking inventory, bookkeeping. But if you remember the entrepreneur on the slide before in red ink, it said systems, money, and people. Systems first, investment versus return second, and people third. First, I have to create the system that I approve in shopping competitors' prices. Then I have to create an investment that makes sense. How can I pay someone to go over to these other stores and come back and still have it be profitable for me? And third, who am I going to find and how am I going to train this person so they know exactly how I want my floors shined, exactly how I want my inventory taken, exactly how I want my books kept, and maybe more importantly, and maybe more relevant to the residential real estate industry, how do I want my customers talked to when they come into my store with a customer service complaint or a return? How can I ensure, forget store-wide, how can I ensure statewide? How can I ensure region-wide? How can I ensure nationwide that the people that are shining my floors, greeting my customers, and shopping competitor prices are going to do it the way that I said? You can't do it unless you're managing systems, money, and people. Now, some of you are online today going, why the heck am I sitting here? I don't even know if I'm ever going to hire a personal assistant. And I hear these conversations from residential real estate agents across the country. I need to make more money. And actually, I'm going to take a step off the old soapbox here and say, you know, my buddy that I just dedicated the whole training to, he's the guy who's been making six figures in residential real estate for more than 15 years. And he doesn't understand the 312% paradigm shift. He doesn't understand that you don't spend money on a personal assistant. You invest money in a personal assistant, and that investment has a particular ROI depending on the quality of your systems and the quality of the people that you hire and how you manage them. He would say something to me like, I don't need to spend $18,000 a year on a personal assistant. I need to make more money. Where would I find someone that would work for me on my budget anyway? I don't even need a personal assistant. I close 2 to 3 transactions a month. I feel very, very comfortable. I'm in a nice stride, kind of at a swagger. I know what I'm doing. I know everything that I need to do, and I can manage my 2 to 3, maybe 4 closings on a good month myself. I don't need a personal assistant. I wouldn't even have anything for the personal assistant to do because I'm sure not going to trust them to talk to the appraiser. I'm sure not going to trust them to talk to the inspector. I'm sure not going to trust them to deliver the inspection reports to my buyers. What could I do? I can't delegate any of this stuff. See, the conversation that we have with residential real estate agents about the personal assistant requires a shift, a fundamental change in the approach or perceptions about personal assistants. And I think the line on the bottom really separates the two perceptions the best. In other words, assets or investments generate wealth and revenue. Think about that. When you buy stock, if you were fortunate enough to buy Apple stock, a few years ago, if you were fortunate enough to buy GE stock, if you were fortunate enough to buy, I just bought some AT&T stock, it pays a 5.5% dividend. Okay, before the stock goes up or down or sideways, it always pays a 5.5% dividend. So you're virtually guaranteed 5% return on your investment, even if the investment stays the same. Well, investments and assets generate wealth and revenue. And here's where the challenge arises for most of our real estate professionals that haven't yet discovered entrepreneurial endeavor. Costs and expenses reduce net income, but investments increase revenue and wealth. So I'm going to share with you a little journey before we get into some of the nuts and bolts of managing a personal assistant and how you can apply systems in your career path so that you're ready for a personal assistant. Because let's face it, if my buddy from Remax doesn't have systems and he brings a personal assistant in, he's dead. But way back in 1986, I walked into a bank called Barnett Bank to cash a commission check. I'm an 18-year-old kid. Honest to goodness, I was driving a Suzuki Samurai. Does anybody know what a Suzuki Samurai is? It's a fake Jeep. It's the cheapest version of a Jeep there ever was. I think the whole thing was $8,900 retail, brand new, out of the showroom, $9,000, and it was a little fake Jeep, and that was my first real estate car, believe it or not. But in 1986, I walked into a Barnett Bank in South Florida, and I literally cashed a check for about $6,800, let's say. Well, I didn't deposit it into Barnett Bank because my bank wasn't at Barnett, and I didn't want to deposit in my bank because I knew there'd be a 3-day hold. This is how an 18-year-old kid thinks. So I went to the Barnett Bank and cashed it. They handed me $6,800, then I had to drive across the town to put it in my bank account to get real-time money, you know what I mean? Ready, willing, and able to spend. Well, this bank teller was a much older guy than me. He was in his 40s. And he said to me, "What do you do in the residential real estate business. And I said, I'm a real estate agent. He goes, God, can I talk to you about that? And he became my first personal assistant. His name was Steve Finley. He is actually a broker owner in South Florida today. From working with me as an assistant, he transitioned to a listing agent, and then he transitioned to a broker owner. But I'm thrilled to have played a part in his career, but more thrilled for the revenue that I generated after hiring my first personal assistant. In 1990, my sister married a Circuit City sales clerk. This Circuit City sales clerk was kind of miserable working the store because they made him work 12 hours a day. He would have to sell 50 TVs to make a living, and I ended up offering him a part-time job on the weekends or on the days that he wasn't working at Circuit City, and he became my vice president of sales at my brokerage, and he still works for me today. In 1994, my next-door neighbor, a lady named Ellie Schofield, lost her job. She was unemployed, and she lived right next door to me, and I offered her a part-time position and got her involved, and she ended up working for me for about 5 years. I don't know if these are relevant to you, but in 1999, one of my best clients, a lady who I had sold 7 homes over a 20-year window, said she was quitting her teaching job to stay home and raise her newborn. And I don't know if you know this, but that lady's name is Carrie Krumenacker, and she's the co-founder of Associate Works today. That was about a 16-year relationship born out of a personal assistant that became the we, which became much better than my own I. In 2002, my brother-in-law, who's now the National Business Development Manager for Annie Mac Home Mortgage, came to work for me. He went through a serious life-changing experience, and we counseled together over the course of a year. And during that year, we discovered that he was aspiring to become something more than what he had been in the past. He was aspiring to do something with his life that challenged him and could create an income and could create a better life for himself. So I hired him as a personal assistant. And finally, just a couple of years ago, my son's football coach was a young kid in his 20s, and he just, by the way, asked me what he might be able to do to earn more money. All of these examples over the last almost 30 years, oops, I'm going to just turn that off. My bad, guys. But all of these experiences over the last 30 years really helped me, and I hope could help you discover that the word we is exponentially better than the word I. That this team approach, this camaraderie that exists is significantly better for quality of life. It can be significantly better for your time management, even holding you accountable. I know some people who are online today that pay coaches $500, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 a month to hold themselves accountable. What I discovered 20 years ago is that when I give my personal assistant the right authority and responsibility in my business plan, then they hold me accountable. That's an interesting shift, that a personal assistant actually holds you accountable. So let's not think about hiring a $30,000 a year personal assistant day one, dollar one. Let's see what kind of choices you have in your career path right now, depending on where you're at. You could go subcontractor. You could go a 1099 subcontractor who works for you piecemeal. That's legal. They're responsible for tasks, and that's all they do. You can hire a part-timer from 9 to noon or from 10 to 1. Think about this world. Before I go away from part-timers, think about this world at every elementary school in the country, at every middle school in the country, with the stay-at-home parent that drops their child off at 8 a.m., 7:30, and has a fistful of things to do every week between 7:30 and 3. But do you think there might be a subset of those parents that drop their kids off at elementary or middle school and have that window between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. or 7 and 3 or whatever that window is, that they could use 3 to 5 hours a day, maybe a couple days a week, to work for you? Do you know how many bachelor's degrees, associate degrees, master's degrees, MBAs there are that are now parents that are dropping their children off at school and really looking for that part-time job to stimulate themselves and to be encouraged and part of something? I'm telling you, man, the world is ripe for the right employer to come in. Another vehicle that you can use for personal assistant is called a timeshare assistant, where 2 or more, 3 or more, 4 or more realtors share the expense of one personal assistant. And there's a lot, that's a sticky wicket, guys. You don't want to jump into a timeshare with 3 or 4 agents unless you really have systems and the money and the people managed. And I'm not just talking about the person who's your personal assistant. I'm talking about the people that are part of the timeshare. You got to really understand that chemistry, if you will, before you entertain it. And then the big one is full-time. That's when the world really changes. But don't think you can't crawl, walk, run with a personal assistant. You absolutely can. Think about a subcontractor for a moment. And just for goofing around, let's think about a teenager. Let's think about a teenage girl who's in 10th grade, who's 15, 16, 17 years old, and comes home from school every day and does her homework. What if she hand-addressed in blue ink 10 envelopes a day for $5 a day? Now you have hand-addressed envelopes to go out to your sphere of influence if you choose to use that methodology. It's the most effective communication methodology there is, especially to sphere of influence in farming clients. What about another guy? He played football all season. I had about 10 of these kids in my life back in the day. They played football all season, but after football season was over, they had nothing to do in the afternoon. So delivering door hangers for me for $10 per 100. A dime a door became a job that I offered subcontractors in my community. I had an individual come into my life that was very, very competent and proactive, and I had him do 10 e-bowl follow-ups. That was for sale by owner follow-ups. The system that I had created for following up on for sale by owners, I had him do 10 for $100. Well, boy, howdy. Do you know, I am almost laughing because I did this for almost 8 years. I paid $100 for every 10 for sale by owners that I hit. And do you know that I never once did I pay $100 without getting a listing? I would, let's say on 100 for sale by owners, I would never take less than 10 listings. So this was a system that guaranteed the return on investment. Remember, you have to manage the system first. So if you don't have a system for following up on for sale by owners, how are you going to train somebody else to do it? And some of you guys are just rolling your eyes right now. You're thinking, oh, Russ is full of it. He's making this up. There's no way that cat in South Florida managed a kid for $100 to follow up on 10 for sale by owners and got a listing every time. There's no way that happened. And there's no way that I paid a guy to write expired letters for me for 10 years. And I paid on average $5 to $10 a day. $1 a letter mailed. So he would do 10 expired letters a day. And I would end up with an extra 4 listings a month from that. Do you see how the shift has to occur in your brain? You can't think, what do realtors do? They take leads off the internet and they take buyers out and show them houses. No, they don't. Listing agents have to farm. They have to do expireds. They have to do for sale by owners. They have to do door hangers. They have to manage their sphere of influence. Can a subcontractor manage your sphere of influence? Absolutely. Now let's blow the lid off this thing and talk about a subcontracting professional following a system taught to you in the 9-week program called Farming Fridays. So you're telling me a guy who managed a 20,000 home farm is teaching you his exact system, what postcards he sent, what door hangers he used, what farming letters he used. He's teaching you what email system he used to manage his farm. He's even teaching you what he said in his emails. And I could pay a kid $10 an hour to manage my farm and pull an extra $60,000 a year out of that farm. And that could be a subcontractor. Post to Craigslist. Some of you are starving for high-end buyer leads between 280 and 450, 600,000 and below. These leads will come to you from Zillow, they'll come to you from Realtor.com, but they can also come to you from Craigslist if you manage a Craigslist loader. Transaction coordination work. This is where some of you get really nervous because you don't have a system or you don't trust the delegation of others. Do what you do best and delegate the rest means I don't need to be at an inspection. I don't need to be at an appraisal. And I dare say at, 3,500 homes closed, having a 30-year career with over 3,500 closings, I don't necessarily need to be at closing unless there's a problem. And if there's a problem, I'm going to nip it in the bud an hour and a half before the closing. I'm not going to let my buyer or my seller walk into closing and face problems. That's immature transaction management. Pre-closing drill. The most important system I ever implemented in my real estate career was called a pre-closing drill. We are going to share it with you. And then post-closing drill, a very lucrative return on investment called post-closing drill. These are systems that my subcontractors can manage. Timeshare. Let's shift gear. A subcontractor is someone who works on a 1099 fee for service, is not an employee. You don't have to worry about HR rules. You don't have to worry about hiring, firing. You're just subcontracting labor tasks. Timeshare is a little different. You're going to bring on this employee, and the employee is going to be shared by several other professionals, maybe in your office, maybe you're a partnership, but you guys are going to split the costs of this. So my first suggestion is that you would have a clearly defined written agreement with the people that you're sharing with. The other thing, and I know dozens and dozens and dozens of agents across the country that have used time sharing to get their first personal assistant. Make sure that you have preset tasks for every day, and make sure that those tasks are managed on a rotation so that no one person in the timeshare is dominating the usage of that personal assistant. Set up a written schedule for evaluations, both of the relationships of the people timesharing and of the personal assistant. Say, we got to get together once a week to review, to manage our expectations, and to sort out the differences that we're having. Have a written conflict resolution procedure. What that means is if you and your timeshare partners with the personal assistant have a conflict, appoint someone, be it your broker owner, your manager, a neutral third party, maybe some top producer in your office that has no bias to help you resolve these conflicts. And then ultimately, if you're going to get into a timeshare, make sure you have a written agreement for how you can get out of the timeshare. Make sure you have a written agreement for how much it costs you. Okay, I'm going to put $100 a week in. We're going to have a full-time personal assistant. There's going to be 3 of us sharing the personal assistant. If I want to quit, I want to know what the terms are of me quitting. I want to know what the terms are if we have to fire this individual. This is a great slide for me because there is some convoluted headaches when you go to timeshare. There's some lack of authority and a lack of kind of holding the person under your thumb when you're dealing with a subcontractor. But when you come to a part-timer, let's go back to that father who drops his kid off at school and goes home, the mother who drops her kid off at school and goes home, has a few hours each day, maybe 3 days a week to put in. If you had 10 to 25 hours per week with a person, maybe he's semi-retired. Maybe he's semi-retired and he's just looking for something part-time. Maybe she's dropping her kids off and she's bored during the day and she really wants something to do. Preset tasks on a schedule is key when you're hiring your first part-time personal assistant. Setting an expectation that you are an authority figure, that you are the boss, that you do not cross lines and become the buddy. All too often, a personal assistant in a real estate business becomes a paid friend or a shadow. You know what a shadow is? It means they follow you around and they pick up your scraps, like something that falls through the cracks. They're there to catch up scraps. That's how a lot of real estate agents manage their personal assistants. It's ineffective. It's not a good return on investment. You need a written schedule for evaluation. You say, listen, once a week on Fridays at 3, we're going to sit down. We're going to go over how this is going, because I'm not going to tolerate someone working for me if it's not going well. You need to let them know exactly what is expected by them and by when. And I love to use Microsoft Outlook because it sets up tasks and times and time blocking for my personal assistant so that I can go back to their Microsoft Outlook schedule and review it with them. At the risk of sounding idealistic, I want to put an idea in your head that could grow like a seed in your business life. And that seed is at the top of your screen right now. And it says, could you imagine a world where a person came into your office or into your home or at their own home and they earned about $250 a week, $200 a week, let's say, and that over the course of spending $10,000 on this individual effort, that they were able to produce $3.25 million in gross production for you via Craigslist loading, task management, past customer sphere of influence, farm areas. Is that a reality for you? Because if I can't spend a dime and make $1, I don't want to do it. I'm not interested in spending 10 grand to get 10 grand. I'm not interested in spending 10 grand to get 20 grand. This is my business life. I need to spend 10 and make back $80, $90, $100,000 from that investment. And if I can't do that, I'm not going to hire this person. Which comes to the biggest leap of faith, jumping in with both feet. If you currently, and this is where I say, I dedicate this to my buddy. He's a 6-figure agent. I love him to death. We're very good friends. We talk about challenges that we're both facing. We talk about everything, and we go out and there's this, it's like trying to explain the color of a rainbow to someone who's colorblind. I can't even begin to explain to him what it means to have a personal assistant because he can't picture it. But if you currently earn between $60,000 and $150,000 and you have a little bit of assets in reserve, maybe 10, 20, 25, 30, if you have 3 to 5 months of cash on hand to cover your bills, and you have a little bit of a retirement account building, you're someone who manages their money well, then you should start thinking about $18,000 to $25,000 in annual expenses for a full-time personal assistant. What you're going to discover is that money doesn't just buy you money. It buys you peace of mind. It's going to buy you a more peaceful career path. It's going to buy you a higher level of customer service and efficiency. And finally, it's going to hold you accountable. In the beginning of this session, I mentioned guys that are paying Mike Ferry, Floyd Wickman, Tom Hopkins, Todd Bates, Tom Ferry, Brian Buffini, $15,000 a year, $6,000 a year, whatever they're paying them to hold themselves accountable. And I can only stress to you the reality of when Carrie Krumenacker became my full-time personal assistant, how much she utilized the word, but you said. The words, but you said. She would say, but you said we were going to do this. But you said we were going to farm this. But you said we were going to do this much volume. But you said you were going to do this on Wednesday. And that but you said held me accountable to a much higher level of productivity. How do I manage others? We're going to go through a quick checklist, and then I'm going to show you some systems, and I'm going to invite you to a whole new world of systems, money, and people management. There's a couple premises that we need to get in place before we consider hiring even a part-timer. If I'm going to hire a subcontractor to do my door hangers, I need to know what roughly it takes to deliver door hangers. If I'm going to hire somebody to do expireds, I need to know that these are preset tasks, that I give my assistant a checklist so that she or he has to initial next to each task that they complete. I need to give my assistant clear, concise what I call black and white direction. So there's no ifs, ands, or buts that he or she understood how, what, and why they were going to do it. I need to have deadlines. I think the best managers in the country, in any industry, manage goals, and they manage time, and they manage benchmarks. They say to their assistant, is this okay to have this done by Wednesday at 5? But like the sharpest entrepreneurs I've ever known in my life, they don't forget to check back at 5 on Wednesday. Those are the sharp entrepreneurs, the ones that hold their assistants accountable not only to the goals and the benchmarks, but the timelines. If you're going to hire your first personal assistant, or if you're managing a personal assistant right now, set in your calendar, in your Outlook or in your time management system, a preset window for when you're going to sit down and have meaningful, constructive, positive, proactive dialogue with your assistant. This is, I think, one of the areas that listing agents and buyer's agents don't ever transition to that manager. Look, every Wednesday at noon, we're going to sit down for 15 minutes. I'm going to evaluate how the last week went. Maybe once they've been there a while, it goes to bi-weekly. Maybe then it goes to monthly. Maybe if you have the right personal assistant, like Carrie became for me, or the right recruiter when Jimmy became that assistant that was so awesome at recruiting, I only have to check back with him quarterly. But there better be a timeline for evaluations and accountability. Another thing that great entrepreneurs do, and this is across the board, I don't care if it's Fred Smith at FedEx, or he always says, happy cows give better milk. Inspired assistants who see the next level and can see a greater, they're part of something that's bigger than themselves. They get perks and recognition. Don't ever feel silly giving somebody recognition, the employee of the week or the employee of the month. And again, that black and white direction instead of gray. The theory, let's just go through a couple. We're going to go right into systems. I know we're running a little later today because I had that hiccup with the microphone, but let's consider this opportunity as a singular study on how a subcontractor could come into your life. Go to the HUD list. Go to the auction.com list. Go to the MLS. Any properties that are okay to advertise, and pull 50. Call up your niece or your nephew. Call up your retired uncle, cousin, or friend. Even call your mom or your dad or a teenager in the neighborhood. Sit down with them and explain that you're interested in trying something with them. This is ABC 1, 2, 3. Hey, I want to try something with you. I want to show you how to post to Craigslist. If you're not familiar with it, MyWork Suite is free. Go to myworksuite.com and sign up for a free account. You can use a free Craigslist loader on MyWork Suite. And you can have that personal assistant take those okay to advertise properties, excuse me, and load them onto Craigslist for you. In our technology platform, MyWork Suite, it creates a single property website that captures the lead whenever it clicks on the site. It's an awesome piece of equipment. Whether you use MyWork Suite or not, go to that potential assistant and say, hey, I'm willing to pay you to load 3 Craigslist ads a day for a week. It could be the same properties, 3 times, 3 properties every day. And tell them that you just want to try it. You just want to give it a shot for a week. So I'm going to pay you $50 this week to do this 5 times this week. $10 an hour for 5 hours. I'm going to give you $50 at the end of the week, and I want to try and see. And this is for the entrepreneur who's online listening. I want to see how many buyer inquiries I get at $300,000 to $400,000, $200,000 to $600,000. How many buyer inquiries I get from his labor, and if that $50 a week times 40 weeks is what? Somebody do that math for me. That $2,000. If that $2,000 that I invested is going to pay me back $20,000. Do I believe, Terry, if you're listening, do I believe in my heart that if I spend 3 ads loaded 5 times a week, that at the end of 40 weeks, I will have sold at least 4 homes for 20 grand? Because if I could spend 2 grand and I can make 20, then I'm an entrepreneur. If I could spend 2 and make 4, I'm not an entrepreneur. In fact, I'm an idiot in the residential real estate business if I only doubled my money. Set a meeting for 1 week later to evaluate and take a look at some of these opportunities. Find a teenager to deliver door hangers for you twice a week. Get a retired person to do your 10 e-bowl follow-up systems per week. If you don't know what e-bowl is, go back to our on-demand library on AnnieMacWorks.com. Go to the on-demand library and learn the e-bowl follow-up system. Have an eager agent become your transaction coordinator. Make sure that they're successful in closing transactions, and just say, dude, I need somebody to handle my transaction management, because every time I get busy, I quit doing the prospecting work that I was supposed to do because I'm too busy transaction coordinating. If you ever want to know what real entrepreneurs do, hire a buyer's agent for 1 transaction at a time and assign them the leads that are coming in from your nephew posting. Just say, look, I'll give you these leads at 50-50 if you can close them for me, and see if that buyer's agent will work those 8, 10, 12, 15 leads a week from those Craigslist posts to go out and take those buyers out. I'm giving you examples that are real world examples, but you need to remember one thing before you make this decision, and we're going to start wrapping up here pretty quick. But the cardinal rule of managing others is that there are no bad employees. There's just bad managers. It was the wrong hire. You put the wrong person in the wrong place. You didn't evaluate his skill set enough before hiring him or her. You didn't explain the tasks clearly enough before you made the hire. It's never a bad employee. It's always a bad manager. And if you have that attitude, you can follow this world the way that Kroc developed the McDonald's organization, the way that Michael Gerber wrote the book The EMyth and The EMyth Revisited. And I encourage you to study Grinding It by Roy Kroc. I encourage you to study Michael Gerber's EMyth and The EMyth Revisited. But there's a warning that comes along with this decision, and the warning is task-oriented people who work for $10 an hour need strong managers. They need very clear tasks and extreme levels of accountability. In other words, you're not managing people as much as you're managing minutes and you're managing hours. What did you do for this hour? What did you do for this period? What did you do for this day? They're not necessarily self-starters. But as I found with some really high-quality hires that I made, there's a huge bonus if they are. But don't go into a personal assistant expecting them to be a self-starter. That might be a mistake. So 25 years ago, and this is where the systems start, okay? I was a listing agent. So my job was to do farming letters and expired letters and for sale by owner follow-up and just listed and just sold letters, right? I was a listing agent. 15 years ago, I became a broker owner. So the tasks that I had changed from farming letters and expired letters to recruitment letters, thank you notes for people who sold our listings, event invitations to upcoming recruitment events and sales rallies that we do. The important part isn't the tasks. And I hope I don't sound like Charlie Brown's teacher here. I feel like playing a loud cymbal clash right now to get your attention, because the important part was that the tasks could be performed by an assistant or an employee. See, each of the 4 tasks that made me a very productive listing agent could be done by someone other than myself. And each of the tasks that made me a very effective recruitment broker owner could be done by someone other than myself, because we took the time once and for all to develop these systems. Look at the very, very bottom of your screen where it says short sale, SOS, where it says buyer orchestra, where it says listing orchestra. See, you're going to see this screen change. These were our systems for buyer orchestra, short sale orchestra, and listing orchestra. And the listing orchestra was the shortest. Upload signed listing agreement, enter incomplete listing into the MLS, blah, 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 blah. Now watch this. And this is all going to lead you to Wednesday if you come back. And I got to wrap up because we're hitting that 11 o'clock mark, and I know that's the time limit for most of us. There's a very funny lesson in this particular slide. And if you write this down, hopefully this red ink on this one slide will be the conduit for the next level of production for you. And if it's my buddy from Remax or if it's a stranger online from Arizona, I don't care. But this red ink is it. I learned that buyers take 28 hours and listings take 7 hours. Nationally, the average from the moments that you spend with a buyer total 28 hours, and the moments that you spend with a listing total 7 hours. That is the one reason that all the smartest people in the residential real estate business, and I'm going to say it right to your face, the smartest real estate agents will face the objections, face the rejection, face the due diligence of farming, and go after listings and practice their listing presentation, because the smartest real estate agents in the country realize that they get the same return on invested time putting in 7 hours as they do putting in 28 hours with a buyer. And that's the one reason why most smart agents move to listings. But check this bad boy out. When I have an assistant, my buyers take me 4 to 6 hours. When I have an assistant, a competent assistant, my listings take me 2 to 3 hours. Can you see the magic in the momentum that can be created with a personal assistant who can do all those ridiculous tasks on the listing orchestra? Do I want to be there entering a listing in the MLS? Do I want to be there at an inspection or appraisal or whatever? Remember, it's systems, money, and people. And you would be bored stiff. I can guarantee you. I could never sell out at an arena. I could never sell out a sales rally. I could never get an audience to pay attention for 10 hours, because the stuff that systems and money and people management are about are so mundane. They are so matter of fact. It's almost like laying bricks. It's brick, mortar, brick, mortar, brick, mortar. That's all that managing tasks are about. It's not sexy. It's not Tony Robbins, a Zig Ziglar, rah-rah. It's task management. And the line on the top, just there, that just went across the top, my pre-closing drill is not sexy. My post-closing drill is not sexy. My past customer follow-up is not sexy. Chip Isabella's 9-week coaching program on geographic farming called Farming Fridays is not sexy. It's task-oriented. It's systems, money, and people that are going to make you the next level. So if you really want to understand what a buyer orchestra is about, a listing orchestra, a short sale orchestra, if you want to understand what the deal-a sale management concept is at the top of your screen, and you want to see what systems and money and people, I'm going to tell you, there is no upsell here, guys. There's no, oh, join this, you're going to pay $1,000. There's no buy this set of tapes. There's none of that going on here. It's just an encouragement that I can't get it all into an hour. We can't get it all into 1 hour. So if you're interested in the keys to the kingdom of managing the tasks of your personal assistant, then you need to come back for Wednesday's workshop. And Carrie Krumenacker was my first real full-time personal assistant back in the 90s, and she has been with me since the beginning. Turns out she's significantly more intelligent than I am. She has a greater propensity for organization, administration, and IQ than I do. And you know what? She has a degree in education. She has a master's in administration. She's the right type of person to teach you this. So if you're interested in the keys to the kingdom of managing the task of your personal assistant, Carrie on Wednesday is going to go over choosing which tasks to assign, using your own to-do list or modeling our to-do list to maximize the results of your personal assistant. She's going to introduce you to those little cards. I don't know if you guys know this, but Richard Simmons has a thing called Deal-A-Meal, where the weight loss prospect has to pick a card for each meal, and that card tells them exactly what to eat for that period of the day. Well, Deal a Sale works identical. It's a way to manage your personal assistant with that system. And then Carrie's also going to go over some more philosophies that work for managing your personal assistants. Remember, if you aspire to be an entrepreneur in 2015, you need to look at your systems, you need to take a really close look at your money, and then you need to discover which people are going to do those tasks. One great big thank you to Annie Mac Home Mortgage and the Annie Mac Nation. We want to thank the whole Workaholic army of loan officers, branch managers, the real estate brokers that support Annie Mac Works, and encourage you, if you're new to Annie Mac Works, get connected. Go join our Annie Mac Nation on Facebook. Join the brokers-only private group called National Flagship Brokers. And with that said, I'm going to wrap up. I know we went a little over, about 5 minutes over, and about 5 minutes it took me to get my microphone fixed. So we certainly appreciate your patience, your attention, your time, and hopefully this will help catapult you to the next level of productivity. Thanks again.